Greetings, family, and welcome to everyone wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So today I want to talk to you about how to find a great black therapist. Okay, how to find a great therapist. What types of things should you be looking for? I've had several conversations with people, with clients who, have gone on to certain websites or have been sort of looking online, but they just don't know where to start. How do you begin the minefield, sorting out the minefield or sifting through the minefield? There's so many therapists out there. There are so many different modalities that people use. Where do you begin to start? Especially if you're a black person, if you're a person of color, and you want to find somebody who is, that is culturally competent, that is relevant, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really important for you to get clear on what you want to do. So that's what this podcast is about today. Okay, I'm going to share with you what you should be looking for, how to get started, and how to look for a therapist, how to look for a great therapist. Okay. So first of all, you need to be clear on why you want therapy. Okay, you need to be clear on why you want therapy. So, I would advise you to maybe write down two to three things that you would like to work through in therapy because the more clear, the more clarity you can have about what you're looking for around the issues that you want to work through, then the therapist is going to have more of an idea is if they can work with you, how they will work with you, what modalities they will use, how long, the process may or may not take. They can be more clear about how they can support you and how they can meet your needs in therapy if they have more of an idea as to what the things you want to achieve. It might be that you're looking for things to work through in the present. It might be that you've got past traumas that you've ignored and they've kind of caught up with you and you need to kind of unpack those things. It might be that you're feeling stuck. It might be that you have a difficult relationship that you want to work through. It might be that you've got family challenges that you need to work through, stuff like that. Just be clear and write down, you know, one, two, three things that you want to get out of therapy. Okay. Also be clear about what you can afford. Okay, because therapy is not cheap. Therapy is not cheap, and you have to be willing to make that investment to make that continuous investment in yourself so that you can get results. You know, I remember when I first started therapy, back in the day, it's still expensive for where I was. I was a single parent, I wasn't earning that much. But I kept a separate bank account where I would put my therapy money in there because it was so important to me for me to be able to do that work and invest in myself in that way, and also being a parent and everything. I just wanted to be able to deal with all of my past stuff so that wouldn't impact my relationship with my child. I made sure that money was in that account every month, so that I could pay my therapist. Okay, so think about that as well. So think about exactly what you want. Think about, how much you can afford, have a budget in place, and then stick to that. If you're low income, or you can't afford, what the therapist has put on their website, it might be worth inboxing them, emailing them, and finding out if they do any concessions. If they do, some not all therapists kind of put that on their website. This is one of the reasons why I do so many live streams because I want to be able to answer questions and share things about the therapeutic process, share things about what people can do, so that they can start the healing process before they even, by the time my clients get in the chair with me, there's already trust built already because they're quite often that have gone onto my YouTube channel, gone onto my website, binge watched a whole load of my videos and understand how I work, and they've already kind of decided that they want to work with me. So yeah, just be really clear about what you want to work through in therapy, how much you want to pay, and have a look online at the therapist. I know there's more therapists now, but if you can get online and have a look, just go on social media, There's loads of stuff on my social media, on my website, on my YouTube channel, so that you can begin to understand what the therapist's values are, how they operate, how they work with clients. You just can get a vibe of the person, whether you think you're going to connect with that person or not, whether you're in alignment with how you feel about the how you feel when you're watching that person online. Can you see yourself working with that person? You know? And don't assume that just because the person's black that they're going to be able to meet your needs. And unfortunately, that is the reality. We have to be real in the sense that the training programs that we have to go on as therapists, unfortunately, there's a lot of them have still got a lot of work to do. Okay, when it comes to cultural competency, and being able to work with other black clients. Unfortunately, a lot of therapists, because they do the training. Okay, but they don't do a lot of their own initial, intentional work around cultural competency and stuff like that. So if you go onto their website and they don't talk specifically about cultural competency, if they don't talk about blackness, if they don't talk about the things that mean something to you, if they're not specific about how they do their decolonization work around race, if they don't mention all of those things, then they're probably not going to be the right therapist for you, because if they don't put it on their website, it's not a speciality for them, which probably means that they might not be able to go in depth as you need them to be. I mean, obviously, if that's not what you're looking for, then great, then that's fine. If that's not something that you want to work through, but I'm a firm believer that if you're a black person, if you're a person of color, and you're not talking about race in therapy, you don't feel comfortable talking about race in therapy, then for me, that's a huge red flag, because we still live inside these systems, okay, that are still very violent. We live in these systems that are emotionally violent, that are physically violent, that are, we're still being abused, we're still being oppressed by these systems. Okay, so you need to have a safe space to be able to talk about those things. So you need to be having these conversations, and be proactive in looking for therapists, looking for stuff on their website, on their social media, that speaks to the values and the things that you want to work through. Okay, that is really, really important. That is really, really important. Sometimes, and I'll share this with you. When I first went into therapy, my first therapist was a white male. Okay, I went to the I went to my GP, and I ended up with this white male therapist who did not have a clue what he was doing. Now, with hindsight, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. He didn't have a clue how to deal with me as a black person. And I think at the time, because I was so traumatized because of the harm that was caused to me by other black people, I didn't realize that I would find it so triggering actually working with another black therapist. So that's another live stream that I will need to do. But that in of itself is an issue, because maybe I was at the time, I wasn't ready to kind of work with other black people because I was just too traumatized by it. But I know that if I saw a black person naming that for what it is, maybe I would have, I could have saved myself a lot of time and money and energy working with white therapists who did not do any work around cultural competency with me. And yeah, they just weren't culturally competent. So that means that there was a huge gap in the work that I was doing, because they weren't asking those types of questions. We weren't having those types of exploration. They were very much in the modality of, the individualistic part of it. They do some stuff around family of origin and asking me questions around that. But there was never any systemic conversations that went on. There wasn't even any conversations around how I felt about working with a white therapist, about working with them as a white therapist, which I think is a really important conversation to have, especially early on, you know? So I think there's that to be taken into consideration. How do you feel about working with another black therapist if you're going to choose another black therapist? And what comes up for you? What are your fears around doing it? And if the therapist can help you to can name that, and can give you support and compassion around how, and explain how they can work with you within that context, then that's obviously going to be really helpful for you. So some of the reasons why I found it helpful working with other therapists that are culturally competent is that cultural competency is basically being able to have conversations about race, about oppression, about the intersections of different things. So for me, I need I do work with a therapist now who is culturally competent. I can talk about my queerness, I can talk about being a woman, I can talk about being black, I can talk about all of those three things, and she understands. She understands, and we'll have conversations about the intersection of those identities. Okay, so quite often cultural competency is about that. It's about the therapist understanding the crossover and the layers and the complexities of those layers that come with having all of those identities. There might be other identities that get thrown in there as well. Maybe the person's neurodiverse. That's another one that can get thrown in there that needs to be considered as well. So you need to be having conversations as well with the therapist about, are they, are they how do they work with clients that are neurodiverse and stuff like that. That's something for you to really, really think about, okay, when you're looking for a therapist, because how the therapist works with all of these different identities is going to be different with different therapists. So it's important that you have a conversation with them. And sometimes it means that if you're still not really sure about that therapist, have a couple of sessions with them. Have a couple of sessions with them. It doesn't mean if you because you've had a couple of sessions with them that you need to stay with them. If you're still not sure after looking on their social media or whatever, it's good to have a couple of sessions just to see how you feel with them. See how you feel, how they operate. How does your body respond, when you're sitting in front of this person? How does your body respond when you're looking at them on social media, when you're listening to their podcast? How do you feel about me as a therapist as you're listening to this podcast? Just pause for a minute. Just pause for a minute. Just pause with me and just think about just go inward just for a minute and think about how your body's responding to me. How does your system feel about the sound of my voice? How does your system feel about just how I present? How does your system feel about the fact that I'm a queer black woman? What comes up for you when you think about that? Does it land? Does it not? Are the things that I'm saying in this podcast, do they resonate with you? Do they make sense? You know, these are all things for you to pause and think about and maybe do some journaling on it. Think about how it feels for you when you're listening to me or what, whoever the other therapist that you might be considering to take you on this journey. Okay. These things are all really, really important and take your time. Okay. Take your time when you're looking for a therapist because this is very, very tender work. All of my clients that I work with, it's all trauma work. It's all trauma work and it's very delicate work. It takes time and it takes energy and it can be exhausting. Depending on what you're working on, it can be exhausting. So you need to be able to build trust over time. There's a podcast that I did a couple of weeks ago that explores, how I work with clients and stuff like that. So if you're interested in working with me in therapy, then you can just go to my website or go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. And you can find details there about how you can, go to my blog and you can find all the other podcasts and stuff that I've done. And yeah, you can have a listen. So I break that down into a lot more detail about the modalities that I use and stuff like that. And some of the stuff that I've actually created myself in the sense that there's a modality that I've kind of created myself that I use with clients. I've used with clients over the years, and that's just come from my experience, personal and clinical and professional. But yeah, take your time, so that you can find someone, give yourself permission to kind of sit with the process because it is going to take time, and just kind of, if you really want to dive into this work, you have to give yourself permission to kind of accept that in order to kind of really start making a dent in this work, I think you need to work with, for me personally, you need about a year, 18 months, something like that, minimum. Obviously, depending on the subjects that you're bringing to therapy and what you want to work through. But in order to kind of build the therapeutic relationship, okay, for us to get to know each other, and for me to really understand who you are as a person and what your needs are, and for us to be able to build your self-care in the present, to uncover stuff from the past, to be to build the confidence, do shame reduction, explore the cultural competencies, explore the relationship with yourself. There's a lot of stuff to unpack. Okay. There's a lot of stuff to unpack, and and it's not just about what we talk about in therapy, it's also how you take care of yourself outside of therapy, which we do talk about in session as well. We talk about, what your self-care looks like. And, it takes time for the shifts to happen in therapy. There's no such thing as microwave therapy. Okay. There is no such thing as microwave therapy. It takes time, and you have to be willing to give yourself permission to let the process do what it needs to do. Okay. Let the process do what it needs to do. So yeah, you have to really be committed to that. You have to accept that, because it's no, I mean, so, there can be situations where you might come in and there might be one specific thing that you want to work with, and we could maybe spend a few months working on that one thing. If you want to do it like that, you can do that. I'm not saying that you can't. But if you really want to have more lasting change, okay, that's long term, then you need to commit to the process. Here I am 15 years later in therapy, 15, 16 years later in therapy. And, I still see my therapist. Obviously, I don't see her weekly anymore, because I've done a lot of work, and I also I'm in recovery and stuff like that. So I do have different spaces that I use. But, I only see my therapist now maybe once a month. Okay, I see my therapist once a month, twice a month if, if I've got something pressing that I really need to talk to her about. But most of the time now I see my therapist once a month, because it's more like maintenance. Okay, because stuff does come up for me. Stuff does come up for me. There are anniversaries that I need to work through. Sometimes I get triggered by certain things. Whatever it is in its really good way of maintaining, my well-being. So I see my therapist once a month now, after 16 years and training as a therapist and being in recovery. I still see my therapist once a month, and that's my investment in myself. I take that stuff very seriously as well, because I am a therapist, so I need to make sure that my own well-being is okay. So that's how I commit to myself. That's my commitment to myself, as well as having supervision, as well as doing my recovery meetings and all the rest of it. I still need to do my maintenance work in therapy. So yeah, it's about just committing and surrendering to the process. Okay. And that commitment has to be financial, it has to be emotional, it has to be time bound as well. You have to commit to it. You have to just lean in and surrender to the process, and just give yourself permission to stay in therapy as long as you can. You know, give yourself permission to stay in therapist as long as you can. Okay. Um, Yeah, and do your research. Do your research. Check, if the therapist is registered or not. And again, don't just assume that just because that person is registered, they're registered with the BACP, or whether they're certified, whatever government body there is. Those government bodies are not always great when it comes to cultural competency. I'm just going to keep it real. So again, you have to kind of use your gut, do your research, look at the person's website. If they some therapists will do like they'll do like they might want you to fill out a form or whatever. Some of them might do complimentary calls. I used to do them back in the day, but I don't do them so much now, because I've got so much content on my website around how I work and stuff like that. I pretty much answer a lot of the questions that clients normally have, so I don't do any of those complimentary calls anymore. Clients often, they just binge watch a lot of my stuff on YouTube or whatever, and then they can make the decision if they want to work with me or not. So yeah, just make sure you do your research, read articles, listen to the podcast, whatever you need to do, so that you can decide how, the therapist work, to make sure that the therapist work is in alignment with what you want to work through. Okay. And when you have your first session, the first couple of sessions, the first sessions that I normally do with clients is normally it's a consultation. I normally talk a little bit about the client's history. I don't talk about any deep trauma stuff if their client doesn't want to, because obviously I don't want to re-traumatize them. And I believe that, any of the big issues that the client wants to work through, that quite often will come out. it will come out during the course of the sessions anyway. But you can have general conversations about I have general conversations about what the client wants to work through, the types of issues that they want to talk about, and then obviously the details will come out once the trust has been built. Once they've had a few sessions, they're feeling more comfortable, then more stuff will come out. But it is a two-way conversation. Think about questions that you want to ask your therapist. Think of, write a list. Maybe that's something that I can do actually as a download. Actually, and I'll put a download actually with below this podcast is what you can questions for you to ask your therapist, because again, it's a two-way conversation. It's not just about the therapist is the all-knowing, all-being, all under. They don't know everything. Therapists don't always know everything. You know yourself best. Okay, you know yourself best. The way that I see it is, I'm no better. I try not to create any type of hierarchy when it comes to my clients. And a lot of my clients have said that to me, actually. One of the reasons they enjoy working with me is because there's no hierarchy. I don't do this kind of blank slate thing that they talk about in a lot of Western in the training and in Western therapy and stuff like that as well. It's almost like, the therapist is supposed to be this blank slate that just nods and doesn't really say a lot. But I know that my clients actually have enjoyed, or they found it really much easier to relate to me because I do share some of my personal experience. Obviously, I don't do that in session because the session is the client's time, but in my marketing and stuff like that, and in my podcast and in my live streams, I've always shared my own personal experience, how I personally deal with some of the issues that my clients come to session with. And so they're able to see that it's not just me as a therapist that is supporting them, but also I have, real life experiences, that also relate to the topic. And as I share how I deal with these things, and from a personal perspective and also from a professional perspective, that kind of builds trust with the client. They know that I'm not just talking out of books or whatever, or talking about things intellectually. I'm also talking about it from a personal perspective, which actually has gone a long way to build trust with my clients. So yeah, just remember that it's a two-way conversation when it comes to doing the first few sessions with your therapist, so that the therapist understands again what your needs are, and you can understand if that therapist, you can make the decision whether that therapist is right for you or not. Okay, and just be open and willing. There's no perfectionism. Just understand that the therapy process is messy. Okay. There's no microwave therapy. There's no perfect, road to healing. There's no end date to it either, in the sense that it's a process. It's a lot, commitment to healing is a lifelong process. You might have moments where you might have a few years where you're in therapy. You might have a time that you're having a bit of a break. There might be time when there might be a period of time when you're in recovery, when you're focusing on that. There are different seasons of healing. There are different seasons of healing. It might be that you take some time out. I take a sabbatical. I now take a sabbatical. I took my first one. I did the first one last year. It was only for a couple of weeks, but then this year I did a sabbatical for a month, and I'll do another live stream on that. But I took a sabbatical for a month, and I didn't do any recovery meetings. I didn't do any therapy. I didn't do any. I just let my system settle. I just let myself be, and that was really nice. That was really nice. And I've had this happen with clients as well. Sometimes they go away for a few years and then they come back. They go, oh, I want to do some work on this or that. So, just be open to the process, and you can always go and come back if you need to, and just give your system a chance to settle into, the process, and to settle into help the integration happen with the stuff that you've processed, and to allow your new way of being, your new sense of self to kind of settle into your system. There's a place for that as well. There's a place for that as well. But just be open. Just be open to the process. Be open to being vulnerable. Take your time. Pace yourself. Ask questions. Accept that it's going to be messy. It's not going to be a perfect journey. It's not going to be a perfect journey. It's not going to be perfect, okay? And the last thing that I'll say is if you spend some time with a therapist and you have a few sessions with them, it doesn't work out, don't let that put you off looking for another therapist, okay? Don't let that put you off looking for another therapist. Always keep trying because again, not all therapists are created equal. Unfortunately, there are therapists that cause harm for different reasons. There might be therapists out there that just that do cause harm, you know? So, and also we're human beings. So sometimes therapists are going to make mistakes, but it's not always, maybe you feel that, if the therapist has made a mistake, maybe that's that you can't feel that the relationship can be repaired for whatever reason. You feel like the therapeutic relationship can't be repaired, so you feel like you'd have to go your separate way, or maybe it just doesn't feel right for you. Maybe the vibe wasn't right for you. Maybe the values don't align, or whatever it is. For whatever reason, you can always go and look for another therapist, but don't let a relationship with a therapist that wasn't good. Don't let that stop you from looking for another one. Okay. There are always other therapists out there that you can choose. Get recommendations from friends. Ask your friends, if they know any really good therapists. Um, that's always a really good one as well. But yeah, just take your time. And there's the I'm a member of the Black and Asian Therapist Network. So there's a lot of therapists on there as well that you can, if you want to look on there, there's a filter on it so you can kind of filter out, do you want it to be a man, woman, non-binary person? Are you looking for someone that's LGBTQI? Are you looking for somebody, whatever it is? Do you want somebody that's trauma focused or whatever it is, you can use the filter on there and just kind of, use the filter to kind of short to break down the things that you want in that therapist, and then you can just start there. Okay. Um, so yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you've got any questions about anything that I've shared today, you can email me at info@yardofgreatness.com, or you can inbox me. And yeah, just take your time. Looking for a therapist is an important step. Okay, is an important step in doing this work. So take your time, you know, take your time. So yeah, email me if you've got any questions. And if you are looking, if you're considering me as your therapist, then, if you've got any questions or anything about anything else that I haven't shared in this live stream, in this video, then by all means email me. But there are links and stuff like that around the next steps, what you can take to book a consultation with me and stuff like that. If you can, once you've made your payment for your consultation, which will be on the therapy page with the link I will put in the show notes. My virtual assistant will get in touch with you, and she'll book the first session with you. Then my consultations are like 90 minutes, and then after that my sessions are 50 minutes. It's the same price. But yeah, so we'll do the consultation and use that time to get to know each other and everything, and then obviously after that then we'll go on to the subscription, which is like the 50-minute session. All right, so yeah, I hope this was helpful and I will see you next time. Thanks, bye.